somebody else had said, well, you might as well file bankruptcy. Everyone else is. And I went down to a bankruptcy attorney and I went through the process and I had all the paperwork in hand and I thought, there has to be a better way. I started thinking, I can't fold. I have to, turn this around. And then I became the REO queen. But it was because I started nurturing that business and I made myself different.
Only in real estate can you grind for 20 years, make millions, end up broke, miss every family dinner, get bossed around by your own team members, and think, I started with a dream and ended with a nightmare. You need Chevron Coaching. Austin and Nate Chevron, the cousins of coaching, will help and show you how to take back control. Go to chevroncoaching.com. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey, and today my guest is Michelle Fermin, out from the Boston market, does not drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee, but that is okay. We will not hold it against her because she is the #1 realtor in the country, #3 in the world for Century 21. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So, whenever we have someone on the show, we talk about country numbers, but you're talking about the world. What are some other markets that actually have a lot of real estate sales? If you're #3, there's 2 other countries that are or someone in the country.
Canada is huge.
Oh, okay.
Canada usually has that #1 spot, but we're aiming for that #1 spot this year in the world. That'd be amazing. We did it in 2020.
You were mentioning that you're gunning for #1 in AGC and #1 in units, which has never been done before. And right now you're only 9 units behind, so you're like right there.
We're right there. We're neck and neck. Yeah,
that would be pretty impressive.
Yesterday, so I'm really excited. And the team that is #1 for units is over 100 team members. So we're
and how many do you have?
Excited. So we're 30.
30. Wow.
Big difference.
Yeah.
So our
bunch of rock stars.
Per agent is a lot higher.
Well, where I'd like to start is the fact that you were on the verge of bankruptcy in 2009. That's quite a difference from your intro, and you're a very humble person. Just from the time I've been talking to you, I can tell that. And part of it, I'm sure, comes from the fact that you had everything and then nearly lost everything. So you were making $700,000 a year annually before the crash. And you had mentioned all the accolades and had all the things, multiple cars, and then you had to go to your nanny and tell her that you had to let her go, and you couldn't keep her anymore. So tell me about that. I mean, the fact that you told that to Bobby in the pre-show means it was a pretty monumental time for you. Walk us through the rise of fame and fortune and then losing it all.
So I started my career 25 years ago, and it was by accident. My mom wanted to buy a house, and my mom had limited funds, limited English. And when we went down to our local Century 21, we got poo-pooed away. I'll never forget, she qualified for $85,000 for a 2-family, which was pennies where we were. And I said, don't worry about it. I'll go get my license, and I'll come back and help. As if I could just go pick it up at the store, right?
Yeah.
And I did. I went and got my license, and she was my first sale. And then after she bought, her friends, her neighbors, who were also immigrants and also the same position, said, well, why don't you help us? And what was supposed to be a one and done ended up being a phenomenal first year. I was Rookie of the Year. And then by my 3rd year, I was offered a brokerage. And it was a wonderful feeling, right, to be able to help my community. But not just them, it was people that I knew, that I had grown up with, but my friends' parents, all who were immigrants and were humble, hardworking people, but just didn't have the resources. So that's how I started. And we opened up this amazing brokerage.
This was all in Boston?
Yes. So it was in Lawrence. It's about 30 miles north of Boston. I was a single mom of 3 kids. I was working my butt off.
Yeah.
And I was making a phenomenal living, right? And then, of course, 2007 come. And that first year I thought, this is just a one-time thing. It's going to correct itself out. It'll be fine. And I started having to sell assets. And then I had to sell my second home. And I started getting behind on my payments. And I remember thinking, holy cow, I'm going to lose my car. I had a beautiful Range Rover. I remember I paid $120,000 for it. And I was hiding my car because I was concerned that I was going to get repossessed.
Yeah.
When I could laugh about it now, but think about the sleepless nights.
Oh, for sure. Where would you hide it?
Friends' houses, anywhere that I could. And I remember I was super behind on my mortgage. I had to start the short sale process. Somebody else had said, well, you might as well file bankruptcy. Everyone else is. And I went down to a bankruptcy attorney and I went through the process and I had all the paperwork in hand. And I thought, there has to be a better way. And as you probably, I don't think you remember because you're too young for this, but you probably read about it. It was a mass exodus of people leaving. Everyone was just out, I'm done getting a second job. And I get it. But because I was a single mom and I had really most of my adult life in that wasn't an option for me. I said, failure is not an option. So I was down to my last $10,000. It was like 9,800 and something. I mean, I was counting.
Oh, you remember the actual figure.
Oh yeah. I was counting every penny. And I remember coming home and telling my nanny at the time, I can't afford to pay you anymore. I just can't. And she said something that was so impactful to me. She looked at me and she said, you've been so great for me that I will work for you for free.
Wow.
So when she said this, I was like, oh my gosh, number one, the fact that she felt this way about our working relationship and that she said that I had changed her life in a lot of positive ways, that she was willing to help me. Well, of course I didn't let her do that, but I started thinking, I just can't, fold. I have to, turn this around. And that's when I turned to the Tom Ferry ecosystem. I hired a coach. Her name is Owana. She's actually out of Nevada. Owana Miller, amazing coach. And she kicked me in the butt. And she made me ask myself a lot of really hard questions, what my fears were, and walked me through what's even scarier than, losing your house or going bankrupt. And that was the inability not to be able to support my children.
Was there, can I pause you for a second? Was there anyone in 2008, 2009 that wasn't doing short sales and that was like sticking to the regular real estate sales regimen that didn't get hit as hard, that actually kept their numbers up? Or was it, as you remember it, because you were at the top, was it everyone was down and most people were not leveraged enough to be able, like they had to sell their assets or they had to sell everything?
Everyone was down that was not. Everyone was down that was not in the REO space. So when I sat down with my coach, she said, where's the market going in your area? What do you think you need to do? One, I knew that I had to go back to the basics, right? I needed to really focus on building my relationships and asking genuine questions and building systems and being involved in my community and just communication, right? That was the basics for me, the acronym, being involved and going all the way through. But then I also knew that I had to shift. And that was going into a space that I knew nothing about, which was short sales and REO. And of course, you can't just say, hey, I'm an REO queen, or give me these deals, because I had to I had to build my reputation and work my way in there. So I started with short sales. And as I mentioned, I had $9,000 some left. I had invested a portion of that into the coach. And then the rest of it, I said, I need to get my face out everywhere. As the it person, if you're going through these struggles, which I knew people were, I can help you. Now, I didn't know how I was going to help. I didn't have the systems. I didn't have the knowledge, but I knew I needed to learn very quickly. And I had to do it, in a systematic way that I can become a leader in an area that people really needed help. And that's what I did.
So when you say got your face out there, what were the things that you did immediately to do that?
So I'm going to tell you a little secret. We used to have a Spanish newspaper here in our area, and I knew everybody read it. I called the owner, and I knew he was hurting too because it was primarily real estate. I called the owner and I said, I'd like to buy out the back page of your newspaper, the whole page, and I want to commit to a year. I didn't have the money. I mean, I did not have the money. And I said, I'll pay you on a monthly basis, but I want that I want the contract for the whole year. And it basically just said, if you're, you need to short sell your house, I can help you. I can make this work. And that's what I did. I invested, even though I didn't have the money. But now I knew I'm doubling down. I need to make this work. There's no turning back. So that was one of the things that I did. And the coach that I hired, Coach Juana, she was a master in that space.
Yeah.
And she really showed me, I mean, she gave me, a hardcore class that was overnight. So you're going to learn this.
Now, if you pivoted to that for that time, 2008, 2009, did that lead to bigger sales from the network that you created there? Because now they come back to you to buy when they can't afford it, or at least they're referring you out to different, it's not just short sales that you gain from that, it's a whole network.
So Remington, I can tell you in a year, I went from, 20 closings to over 100 closings. We were negotiating the Marshalls. It was the biggest pain in the butt to do. And it was a very long and tedious process, but it was also a very fruitful process. While I was doing that, I was knocking on doors, to get into the REO space. I didn't know anybody in that space. I got a list and I showed up at an asset management company. And of course they said, "Who are you? We don't know you. Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Well, we can't see you." I said, "That's okay. I'm going to be at X place and I'll buy you dinner." And all I simply wanted is just, pick your brain. And I sat down and I waited and I bought them dinner. And it took me about 6 months to hear back from them, but I kept calling them and texting them. And I finally did hear back 6 months later. And then I became the REO queen. But it was because I started nurturing that business and I made myself different.
Mm-hmm. So you made yourself different. You saw the success. Did it mean, and you said it was a pain in the butt, which meant you have to work extra hard, which, if you're in 2000, 2008, 2009, and you're actually seeing the fruit of your labor, it probably was a blessing to work hard, knowing that everyone else is also working hard, whatever that means, and not getting the results. So were you off balance for a time where you're like, I'm just going to have to work all the time until we get out of this? So was there times where you're like, I may have to work like this for the rest of my life?
It's funny that you say that. I'm a workaholic. So for me, it wasn't work. It was, this is just a part of my everyday life. But yeah, if you talk to my team now, I am absolutely wired to work from the moment that I wake up until the moment that I say, okay, I'm done. But yeah, it was long hours and we had to do it. I mean, what choice did you have, right? What choice did you have, especially where we went from such abundance to deficit to then building yourself back up. And again, through this in a market that you really didn't know anything about. I knew nothing about short sales. I knew nothing about negotiating it. I didn't know anything about REOs or that asset management company or what the preservation component of it was. I knew nothing. So if you're going to get a shot, especially from a corporate client, you can't mess up. You need to be that it person from the beginning and really be able to push and show your value. Right. Yeah. I think that's what a big mistake that a lot of people do. Give me the business, and then expect, just to be mediocre. That was never my thing. I always wanted to have that excellence in everything that we had.
So you pivoted to REO short sales, and then when the market stabilized a little bit, it became normal. I'm guessing that's not a big part of your business anymore. It's interesting to think that your business has been up and down and now up again, and it's looked different all three times. I imagine, do you have luxury in there now? Do you have like your team? You have a team of 30, and then what do you guys specialize in this moment?
Residential. A lot of it is first-time home buyers. I shouldn't even say that. We have a really good mix. Of course, a lot of repeat clients. Mm-hmm. We're about 60% buyers because we are in a market that still has a housing crisis. Massachusetts is very, very high demand, very low inventory. So we're about 62% buyers. And then the other component are sellers. But still a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of repeat business. We're very blessed because we do have such a good market share and such a wonderful a team that I think that just our reputation has made a big difference in being able to attract clients.
You mentioned housing crisis. Those are kind of buzzwords, controversial words in the real estate space. Describe to me what the crisis is in Boston and how would you fix it?
Uh, well, that's interesting. Unlike 2020 or 2021, even, right, where we were seeing 30 offers on a property, we're still very much in a very competitive market, but it's now 5 or 6 offers, right? We're still getting, 10, 15, 20% over asking price. We're still having to really be flexible as buyers. But I think that the key component of this is one, either we make the interest rates attractive enough for a seller to say, hey, I'm ready to move, because we know that there's so many sellers that are on that cusp of wanting to move, me being one of them, but not wanting to lose that interest rate of 2 or 3%. So I think that that's a really big component of it. And of course, making, affordable housing. And for Massachusetts, it's tough because where people want to be, there really isn't that space. It's not like out west where you have a ton of land. It's really tight here. In the town that we mostly sell in, it's 10,000 square foot lots, and they're one next to each other. Never mind Boston, right? You can go into Boston and pay $10 million for a condo. An entry level condo is $2 million. That's very unaffordable for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned one of the driving forces being the interest rates of a seller not wanting to leave mid 2s into 3, and that's probably, at least based on all the experts, not going to happen again. So what are you going to see? What point? Because it's come down a little bit now, especially getting closer to the election. I'm not sure what's going to happen the next 6 months. What's the number, or what's going to have to happen in order for someone like yourself to move out, like who wants to move but can't stomach that loss of the 3% interest rate? What's it going to take for that to finally break across the board?
That's a good question. The ones that we do see that are transacting, because properties have gone up so much, right, that they have that
compensating for it.
They're compensating with that huge amount of equity. We're seeing a ton of cash buyers, and I mean lots of cash. $1 million, $2 million properties cash, and that's because of that compensation of the properties continuing to go up as quickly as they have been. Last year, we saw an 11% increase in prices, and we're seeing the same thing this year. And I haven't seen a slowdown as far as appreciation. Yes, we have seen a slowdown as far as demand, but there's still, like I said, multiple offers on any property that is priced correctly.
Someone who's seen such success on the East Coast, I'm curious as to your thoughts on institutional buying and if that's part of the crisis. Do you feel like there is an issue there? We had one realtor on in the Bible Belt that said NAR's asleep at the wheel on this issue, and they're not knocking down the doors enough to really regulate it. I don't really know what they thought the answer should be. There's people on both sides of the aisle for that. What do you feel is happening there?
See, again, that's not a market that we're in. We're really focused in our towns, our communities. We're not seeing that. In our towns, our communities, we're seeing a lot of first-time home buyers. And we are seeing investors, but not at that level. It's just not the market that we're servicing.
Interesting. So you talked about being an immigrant, being bilingual, and I would feel like Boston is a pretty hard-nosed blue collar town. We do it our way, like you're part of us or you're not, kind of thing. So for you to find such success and to find a home there, how did that happen so quickly? Because, I mean, how long were you in Boston before you started selling real estate?
So I don't live in Boston. I live about 30 miles north of Boston.
Okay.
So I started when I was 22 years old. So this is really all I've ever known as an adult. I, unlike a lot of people, and I'm in no way saying, hey, don't go to college. I dropped out of school when I was 14 years old to help my parents pay the bills.
Wow.
I remember coming home and telling my mom I dropped out of school, and I forged my working papers. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that now. And I went and applied for a job as a cashier at our local supermarket. And my mother was upset, as you possibly imagine. But me being the driver that I am, there was no changing my mind. I was 14. I was making $3.25 a minute, an hour. And I quickly realized this isn't the way that it's gonna happen. So I started my first business when I was 15, and then I sold it a couple of years later, and it was $30,000 that I made profit. And I thought that I was a millionaire at that point.
Yeah.
I took that money and bought a second business and started a second business, and then then sold it. And then I went into real estate. So for me, yes, my parents were immigrants, but I had that very entrepreneurial blood in me, and real estate was just a natural calling, right? Because we are business owners, we are the CEO of our own business, and we need to run it that way.
Well, if we, you're number one, and I keep coming back to that because there's a difference between being top 10, which is phenomenal, and constantly being number one. There's just a difference. Like if you look at sports teams, if you look at NFL teams, number 10 is nowhere near number one. It takes a completely different level to be a Super Bowl champion. And if you're number one in real estate, I'm wondering what separates you, not from the rest, what separates you from the elite? What does it take to be literally number one? Why isn't number two in your spot? Why isn't number three in your spot? What is that?
That's an interesting question. 2017, I was an individual agent up until 2017, and I had no life. I remember my assistant at that time said to me, you either start a team or I'm out. I was selling 165 homes a year as a solo agent round the clock. So I started my team. First year, we were number one in the state for Century 21. Next year, we were number one in the country. And then I get a call from Mike Meadler, who is our CEO. And he said, you're number one in the world. And I remember thinking, holy cow, we were only 10 agents. But what had happened from the time that I went into team mode to that point was everything just shifted. It was, how do we get better? How do we make our systems better? How can we become more effective? How can we convert at a higher level, and really micromanaging all these little systems, right, that I wasn't really paying attention to before because it worked before. But now it's like, how do I duplicate this and teach my team what I was learning and be able to actually make money off of this and have a life? So I think that that's a big component of it, that people really don't build the systems and they don't track, and they're not really paying attention to their ROIs and their KPIs, that they're not focusing on that, and they're just focusing on the next deal. I'm always focusing on how can I make that next deal smoother and more profitable.
So I've heard so many top producers say that hiring a coach was the game changer, you being one of them. And I should get Tom to sponsor this podcast. He's got a lot of people. He's got a lot of people that come on and say that. But for you, what some of the most common objections of someone saying, I don't need a coach, like, the money, I think would be the first thing, depending on where someone's at. Yeah, the money. Do I really need it? What are they going to tell me that I don't already know? For you, it was for sure the game changer back in 2009. You still subscribe to that. What is your praise for coaching?
So here's the thing with coaching. A coach is a temporary thing, right? I've had a coach since 2009, but we understand that that's a temporary relationship. Usually a couple of years, right? You'll be able to really work with a coach and be able to help him push you, have her or him help him push you and motivate you to that next level. I keep you excited, right? Because a lot of times it's about that as well. My first coach, Awana, she was the one that I really needed to help me understand that I needed to open myself up to different markets and not have just a one-way thinking. How do I really look at these different markets, and how do I get into each and every one so that I am diverse? After she left, she said, you need to start a team. And I looked for a coach that was specifically going to help me do that. She was someone who had started a team, had built a team, and then sold a team. And I needed that structure. So I looked for someone that I felt that there was a lacking in my business. And she was my coach for about a year. And then once we did that, this is what a good coach does. She says, you've outgrown me. It's time for you to find someone else. And her name is Lori Adams, part of the Tom Ferry system. And
good for her for saying that.
She was amazing. And my next coach, which she helped me get, was Andy through the Tom Ferry system. And Andy was very systematic, and he was about, let's create the structures and the SOPs, and we really need to get tactical. And that's his forte. His forte was, let's build out everything that you need so that you can grow in a systematic way and you can onboard 10 agents at a time without any issue. So he really helped me build that base of my foundation. and Andy Nazaroff. Amazing. Love you, Andy. And then, after a couple of years, we outgrew Andy and we both loved each other and said, I love you. It's time for the next person. And then I went on to our present coach, Coach Jeff Mays, through the Tom Ferry system. And he's our sales coach, right? He's the rah coach. He's the one that really hypes all of my team up. But I also have two other coaches, outside of the Tom Ferry system. And we work on very specific things. Coach Justin, who actually runs an amazing team called Utah Life, he is a phenomenal coach who really kind of digs deep. And a lot of times I call him a life coach, and motivates us to understand, what our own obstacles are and how do we overcome that. So, it really is based off what you need. And those.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You said, how do you determine that based on what you need? I feel like a realtor, let's say a realtor does a consultation with a coach and they do their dog and pony show. And now they have to weigh their options to figure out, am I going to hire this coach or not? And if I'm Michelle, what are the metrics that need to be hit? Like literally, like walk me by the line items. Not, it just has to feel right. Like, do you have like a mathematical equation to figure out, should I be doing business with this coach?
So I don't have a mathematical equation. So whatever I'm looking for at that moment. So for example, when I wanted to hire someone that was going to help me build out the foundation of our team, I needed someone that was very tech heavy. I needed someone that really had the systems down, that had really looked at, demoed a bunch of them and understood them inside and out. And that's something that I was not. I was not a very techie person. So when I talked to the coaches and interviewed them, have you done this before? Tell me what your success rate is. What is your conversion right now? And it really asked the key questions. How many transactions are you overseeing now, and how many times have you done this? So that was really important for me. Right now, we're going into heavy recruiting, and one of the coaches that I'm rehiring, and someone that I had used before, Brian Ellington. He was in the C-level position with Anywhere for many years. He's one of the guys that built out Keller Williams. So he is a real forte in recruitment. Those are the type of people that I need. So we'll hire him again because we're going into this recruitment mode, and he'll help us build out the systems, the scripts, and the plan for the next 6 months. And then once we get there, who knows what our need might be. But
so credentials is number one for you. I can tell based on what you're saying. It feels like number one is credentials, not what they're saying or if you get along. You really put credentials at the top.
Look, at the end of the day, I don't need an accountability partner, right? If I'm talking to you, Remington, and you're at the same level as me, then you're my accountability partner. I want someone that's up here, that's done it before, that knows how to do it inside and out, and that can take me along in that journey, right? I want someone that I could say, yes, this is our goal. And my first conversation is, this is what I want to do. Tell me what you think, where you think you can bring me and how we're going to do that. And if it's something that we vibe with, great. I'm also a driver. So for me, I understand that personality types are really important. I need someone that's going to push me and motivate me. So for me, that's a big component of it too. I need someone that's going to excite me and kick me in the butt when I need it.
Yeah, we always said that it's important to be coached by someone. It's important to have someone who's at your level. And then the third level is at least for me, it's important for me to be coaching somebody. It's important for me to be mentoring. And you obviously have 30 people on your team that is naturally happening. But I think that element goes unnoticed, and how important that is into like filling your cup. Like giving back, even if you make money off of it, doesn't matter. Like if you are actually like pouring into someone who doesn't know as much as you, that teaching element really does help for that dynamic of being coached and coaching.
So I'm going to just correct you on one thing. At least for me, you had said a coach that's on my level. I don't want a coach that's on my level. I want a coach that's
accountability on your level.
Okay.
Yeah. So someone above you, someone below you, and then accountability at your level. Perfect. That 3-tier system. Yep. So here's where I'd like to wrap up. You have a quote that I think is pretty perfect for where we're at for most realtors across the board. Even top realtors I've seen for the first time really struggle in the last 6 to 12 months. Some, not all, that might not have gone through 2008. Like that's actually when I started my business, was 2008. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because no one told me, everyone told me I wasn't supposed to be good at it. And I just didn't care because I was brand new. So I was like, oh, let's just put our head down and work. You have a quote that says, I had become cocky I had lost personal touch. I needed to go back to the basics. I feel like that is something that everyone can learn from in this moment because we're in the same type of environment that you were back in 2008, 2009. Leave the audience with some hope here on what that did for you.
So going back to 2009, just like that, my nanny had said to me, that she was so grateful for everything that I had done, that she was willing to work for free. And at that moment, I'll never forget, it was tears in my eyes. I thought, holy cow, I have literally become so cocky. I have lost one of the things that really helped me become successful. And it was that personal touch. It was that personal involvement in my community. It was helping them do something that was such a huge component of their life. And I had become cocky. I wasn't grateful anymore. And that was one of the things that I really had to go back to. Today, I literally, every time I meet someone, I'm grateful for meeting them. And I try to walk away with something that I've learned from them and give them something of value from me. So that's become just a huge game changer for me. And I know that that's one of the reasons why we continue to increase every year. And it's funny that you had just said that it's become a difficult year. We're up 42% from last year. But I really believe that it's that giving back, like you mentioned. It's that element of really wanting to help someone, and they feel it and they see it, and you being vulnerable and sharing your story and sharing your success story. Because at the end of the day, we're not competing, we are collaborating. I think that that's a really big difference. When you really want to help people, even the ones that are in your market, your other real estate agents, and you're collaborating with them, it'll come back to you 20 times over.
Yeah, I love that advice. It's especially interesting when you're in the business world and you think about if you look at a calendar and you've got specific meetings, so you you have to be on. And what you're saying is you bring value to every conversation, every relationship, every encounter. And that's easy to do if you're anticipating them. But when you're on your way to the mailbox and the neighbor waves at you and you have 10 minutes to talk right there, like, are you rushing that conversation to get to the value that you're trying to bring the next guy or a waiter or waitress, and your take on bringing value to every instance, while I feel like is probably difficult for most of us because we are so quote unquote busy, probably is a big reason why you're so up this year.
I believe so too. It's funny that you say that. Even talking, to waiters and waitresses, I always take the time to ask people, "What is your name?" And how long have you been here? Tell me about your life. I want to get to know people, and I think it makes a really big difference because then people want to generally get to know you. Yeah. So yes, take that interest in people, and it's gonna flow so much better.
Listen to Michelle, and you too can be number 1 in the country, number 3 in the world, knocking on the door of number 1. Thank you, Michelle, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
That's all the time we have. If you want to influence who we have on the show or what we talk about, email us at podcast@realproducersmag.com. And the first teaser on the show, September of 2025, we have a national event, RP Elevate. More details to come. You'll be seeing that in emails in your market. Check with your publishers. We'll see you next time.